Drinks with the devils. The infernal figure loomed over Macon. Its thick, leathery skin was woven with serpentine tattoos that seemed to slither over its slabs of muscle. Its nose bore a black iron ring like a bull, with two identical rings run through its nipples, connected by a heavy length of chain. It snorted smoke out of its nose and spread its heavy, clawed hands, bearing a round, swollen belly. Its grin was wicked and knowing, filled with too many teeth as it looked down at the cleric with its hooded, crimson gaze.
"What'll it be today, holy man?"
Boros rumbled. "The usual," Macon said, taking a seat at the bar. The tiefling chuckled, plucking up his steel mixer in one hand and 3 separate bottles in the other.
"A sinner's delight. Coming up,"
Boros said. The massive bartender mixed the ingredients, sealed the mixer, and shook vigorously. Behind the red silk veils, a whip cracked, and someone screamed into a gag. Boros raised the mixer up above his head, took a swig of something noxious, and then blew a cone of fire above his head like a salamander. When the fire ran dry, Boros wiped the last few smoldering droplets from his lips, opened the mixer, and poured the smoky concoction into a glass. Macon put a silver piece on the bar, and Boros raised an eyebrow.
"Are you opening a tab?"
The tiefling asked. "Keep the change," Macon said, taking a long, slow sip of his drink. The potent liquor numbed his tongue and made the back of his throat burn first hot, then cold as he swallowed. He savored it, then favored Boros with a smile. The tiefling poured more of the noxious mixture from his flask onto the bar, sparking it with his fingertips and letting the fire cleanse any mess left over on the marble surface.
"I take it your last quest was a success, then?"
Boros asked, wiping his hands. "Quite," Macon said, taking another drink. "It was far from an easy task, though. So as soon as the Lord Mayor authorized the script and ensured we were paid, I made my excuses and came hither along my usual route."
"And you're sure no one followed you?"
Boros asked.
"Either friend or foe?"
Macon was drawing breath to answer when a commotion drew his ear. Something hammered on the main door, and it flew open, banging against the stone wall. A powerful figure strode in, bared steel in his hands, his red eyes blazing as he sought a foe. At the orc's side was a sorceress in blue, an incantation on her lips, and her hands raised in a destructive sigil. Macon sucked in a breath, sighed, and stood from his stool with his arms outstretched. "My friends," he said, his voice echoing in the silence of the cavern as the workers and clients of the pit both froze, staring at the interlopers. "I didn't expect to see you before the morrow."
"There he is,"
Tarkus snarled, glancing down at Kyrena.
"Looks like you may have been right."
"Right about what?" Macon asked, trying not to let irritation leak into his voice. Kyrena was staring around the pit, her eyes taking in the petrified onlookers. When her gaze met Macon's, a flush clawed its way up her throat and bloomed onto her cheeks. She dropped her hands, and the crackling auras of energy faded into the air. She tried to speak, but no words passed her lips.
But I thought...
She tried. "That I had made some bargain with an infernal power," Macon said, raising an eyebrow as he stepped closer. "That I was possessed?" Kyrena avoided his gaze, and she mumbled something under her breath. Tarkus frowned, looking from her to Macon. The orc lowered his sword, and furrowed his forehead. He peered at Macon closely, searching his face.
You aren't possessed?
Tarkus asked. Tarkus, my friend, scent the air, Macon said, doing his best to keep the smile off his face. He watched as the orc's nostrils flared, drinking in the smells of the pit.
Brimstone, leather, sweat.
The orc sniffed again, and he frowned. Then he blinked several times and tilted his head slightly.
This place smells like a brothel.
That's because it is a brothel, Tarkus, Macon said. The orc nodded and sheathed his sword before folding his arms across his broad chest, a gesture meant to show that his hands were nowhere near his weapons. Karena still wouldn't meet Macon's gaze, and she seemed torn between fleeing and staying. The air of the chamber had grown pregnant with anticipation, so Macon turned back to the bar. Boros, drinks for my companions, Macon said before raising his voice slightly, and around for the house as well. There wasn't a cheer. The pit wasn't the sort of establishment that would do that, but the remaining tension bled out of the air. The sound of snapping whips started up once more, and in a few minutes, it was as if nothing had happened. Macon handed Boros a sack of coin, which the tiefling hefted before deeming it suitable. The door closed of its own volition, the lock clicking closed with the sound of a vault.
Macon.
Karena tried to say, but he held up 2 fingers. This is a place accustomed to suffering, Karena, he said, picking his glass back up off the bar. I want you to sit with your thoughts until I've concluded my business, which you were so eager to interrupt. Karena stared down into her drink and didn't say anything. Tarkus took a long swig of the dark liquid in his mug, then leaned his elbows on the bar.
Macon, I've changed my mind,
the orc said.
If this is what your priests do in their off hours, I have decided I would like to hear about your religion after all.
The red silks twitched aside and Macon caught a glimpse of Lashara. The she-devil crooked a taloned finger at him. Macon stood and clapped Tarkus on his broad shoulder. Another time, my friend, he said. Now, please, keep Karena out of trouble until I return, will you? As always, thank you for staying to the end of this story. Drinks with the Devils is the introductory short story from the RPG supplement World's Oldest Profession, 100 Courtesans and Concubines. And if you'd like to get a copy of the supplement for yourself, you can get one through the link in the video description below. This story is also the sequel to A Little Taste of Perdition, which can also be found on the channel. If you enjoyed this story and you would like more audio dramas like it, then please leave a like, share the video around on your social media pages to boost the signal, and don't forget to check out our spoken word playlist, which has dozens of additional stories waiting for you.